how good it is when someone refers you a new client who more likely will buy from you. The most common situation that comes to mind is word of mouth marketing. But today, we'll talk about more than that. You'll know how to get more referrals without even asking for that. People will just come to you. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Stacey Brown Randall. Stacey is a multiple award-winning author of generating business referrals without asking. She's a host of the Roadmap of Grow Your Business podcast and national speaker. Stacey has been featured in national publications like Entrepreneur, Forbes, Investor Business Daily, CEO World, Fox News, and more. And we'll start with a big misconception of what is and what isn't a referral. Hi, Stacey. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's so exciting to have you here. We're so excited to hear your entrepreneurial story. Please share with us how you got to where you are.
I always tell folks when they ask me, how did you end up teaching people now all around the country? Because we're in 7 or 8 different countries with the people in my Growth by Referrals program. They're like, how did you end up teaching people how to generate referrals without asking? And I always say it was never a plan. It was actually by the just sheer necessity. And then, of course, by the grace of God, that I actually was able to figure out what I now teach hundreds and hundreds of people all around the world regarding how to generate referrals without asking. So my backstory is a little bit about a business failure. So I owned a company. It was an HR consulting firm. I had big name clients like Ally Bank and KPMG, BDO, and some other large name companies here in the United States. And it was, when I think about that business, that HR consulting firm, from the outside looking in, it looked like it was successful. But what I didn't do, since as a small business owner and at that point a solopreneur, was really figuring out how to continually fill my prospecting pipeline, just to make sure there were always prospects in there so that I always had the potential for turning people into clients. And what happens with small business owners and solopreneurs is that we get like that first client or that first and second client, and we put our head down and we do the work. And then we look up and we're like, wait, the work's over and I don't have anybody else in the pipeline. I don't have another project on the horizon. I've got to go hustle again, right? I got to go back out there and get on the treadmill and try to find that next client. And I found myself on that, what I call the entrepreneur roller coaster, or that ongoing prospecting hamster wheel, without a real clear way of how to fill my pipeline in ways that worked and that I could count on, that were consistent, for over 4 years. And eventually it took a massive toll on the business and I had to shut the business down. It made it to the 4-year mark, but not to the 5-year mark. And I had closed that business down and had to go get a job, which is, for a lot of us as an entrepreneur, that's like the dreaded step backwards, to have to go get a job and work for somebody else again. But while I was there, I did reflect back on, why did my business fail? Why are other companies successful? And I did discover this idea that, okay, you got to fill the pipeline. You got to have ways of filling it consistently. And I thought I knew what that meant, but I guess when I was actually putting it into practice, I really didn't with my first business. So when I left my corporate job, I started my second business, and I started a productivity and business coaching practice. I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to fill the pipeline. And one thing I had been really interested in that I knew I didn't do well in my first business was referrals. And I was like, okay, we're going to get referrals. We're going to make our business more successful because we have the ability to get referrals. And when I look back on my first business, the one that failed, I actually received 0 referrals. Not one. In fact, the only referral that business received was 2 years after I had already shut that business down. So I knew it was an opportunity for me as a way to grow my business, and a better way for me. And so when I started my second business, I was like, okay, I did what most people do, right? I was networking with people, letting them know I had left the corporate job. I wasn't restarting the HR consulting firm. I had a productivity and business coaching practice. I had been certified and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I was doing. And so I was meeting with a bunch of people, doing the networking thing, going to all the networking events. But I was really focusing on how to get referrals. But like everybody else, I looked up the advice on how to get them. And the advice is all the same. It's, if you want referrals, ask. If you want referrals, be willing to pay. If you want referrals, then you have to be overly promotional and gimmicky in a way that would feel not 100% normal for most of us that are in a professional business. And so for me, I was like, you know what? Those didn't work for me. And then you hear a lot about, well, as long as you have a lot of people talking about your business, and then you'll get referrals. And I realized that none of those were strategies I could rely on where I could say, actually, 50% of my clients come through referral, or 80% of my clients come through referral, or I get 5 referrals every month that I can count on. There was nothing there that allowed it to be from a controllable or sustainable for me that I could count on to grow my business. So I started just literally using my own business as a guinea pig and figuring out, okay, I want referrals. I don't want to do it any of the other ways. They are telling me I have to do it. It has to be more than just doing great work and being referable, right? It has to be more than people just talking about me. It has to be more like, if I want this to be a process and a system, I've got to figure out what it looks like to have referrals happen. So I kind of reverse engineered and started looking at the human dynamic and the psychology behind why referrals happen in the first place. And then I compared that to all the advice that was out there. And I was like, these don't even align at all in terms of why referrals happen. And so I literally went out to build a system for myself, for my business, for my coaching practice, to be able to generate referrals in an ongoing way that was sustainable for me. And every year, right, within that coaching practice, I was able to generate over 100 referrals every single year. My first year as a coaching in a coaching business, or as a coaching practice, I received 112 referrals. So every year, over 100 referrals. My business was growing because of it. And then I realized I've stumbled onto something here. And as my clients, who were small business owners that I was coaching, said to me, they're like, you're growing really fast. You're raising your weights. It's harder to get on your schedule. What's going on? What's your superpower? Like, what's the secret? And I'm like, oh, I get referrals, but I do it without asking. So I'm actually consistent in my actions, and it works for me, and it fits who I am as a human. And so they started saying, okay, so then how are you doing it? And the truth is, at first I was like, well, I don't know, maybe it's just me, right? Maybe it's my personality. Maybe it's the business I'm in. Maybe it's just who I am. Maybe it's the fact that I have connections. And then I started doing it with other business owners that were nothing like me. And I realized that they started having success, in some cases better success than I have had, and it was working for them. And as I taught it over the years, I refined it down into a 5-step process of exactly what this looks like, how it's different from everything else that's out there, and how it works. And so now, of course, we've been teaching this through the Growth by Referrals program for about the last 7 years. We're in 7 or 8 new countries. We just added Singapore about last month. So I think that puts me in 8 different countries. And we continue to grow as just an alternative for people who want referrals, but they want to do it without just hoping it'll happen because someone will talk about you, or hoping that it'll happen because you are offering some loyalty program or willing to pay people for them, or that you have to ask for them or be overly promotional and gimmicky. And it just continues to grow.
Wow, Stacey, such a fascinating story. I have so many questions. Let's start with the very, very beginning. What was your first business, and what was your biggest lesson from leaving that and starting the new one?
Yeah, so it was an HR consulting firm, and that's where I had the big name companies like Ally Bank, KPMG, BDO, some other large name companies here, especially in the United States. And the biggest lesson I learned was that you have to have a process and a system for how you're going to fill your pipeline. You have to be filling your pipeline with prospects that are at the level you need it at, so that there are enough clients coming out the bottom of that pipeline, the bottom of that funnel, saying yes to working with you. And it has a lot to do with your closing ratio of like, how many clients do you need, or how many prospects do you have to talk to before someone will say yes. And then there's different ways to fill that pipeline. But for me, I'm the mom of 3 children, and I don't want to spend every night networking, and I don't want to spend every day eating, having a coffee meeting or another rubber chicken lunch or dinner at some networking meeting. I have 3 active children as well. I mean, there's something always going on in our evenings and our weekends. And so spending it networking or stalking people on LinkedIn just wasn't what I was ultimately interested in. I think those tactics work and they complement just about anything you do, but I needed something different that fit what was going to fit for me. And so for me, it became my referral strategy, and that's how I grew my business. But it came out of that hard lesson learned of, you got to figure out how to fill the prospecting pipeline, that funnel, How are you going to do it? What are the sources that are going to fill it, and which ones are going to work best for you? And for me, it was the referral piece. And of course, now that's what I teach.
I think many people can resonate with you. Like, many people don't want to go out and spend time networking and have family. They want to have their own life. But when we prepared our interview, we talk about that you don't even talk about referrals as word of mouth referrals. Usually when people think about the referrals, it's just like someone recommended me. So what is actually referral and what isn't?
Yeah, so I think that's a great first question because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of people who are out there teaching stuff about referrals. And I just like to get really, really clear on what we're ultimately after. And so I always tell folks that we use 4 sales terms pretty interchangeably, but they are not anywhere close to the same thing. And so those 4 sales terms are warm leads, introductions, word of mouth buzz, and then of course referrals. So people will come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I got a word of mouth referral." And I'm like, "That's not a thing." Right? Like at the end of the day, we need to look at these 4 terms differently. And the thing that a referral has that keeps it different from word of mouth buzz, that's someone talking about your business or telling someone else about you, or an introduction where someone is connected to you, but you have no idea why and if they have any reason to buy from you, or a warm lead, which is basically, hey, I know you need to call that company because they need you, but do they even know you're going to call, and why aren't you being connected to them? The thing that a referral has that a warm lead, introduction, and word of mouth buzz lacks is that first, there's always a personal connection. You are always connected by the referral source. Some people call them referral partners. Doesn't really matter, but you're always connected by a human who is your referral source. That is the person who is connecting you to the prospect. So there's always a personal connection because that's where the trust is transferred. The reality of it is, what a referral ultimately is somebody putting their reputation on the line to tell somebody else about how you can solve their problem or how you can make their life better or how you can, fix any issue that they may have. And so when someone's willing to put their reputation on the line, you need them to make that connection to that prospect, to that potential new client, that prospect. You need them to make the connection. Now, I would say 99% of the time this happens over email. That's not to say it can't happen over a group text thread. That's not to say it can't happen face to face if you all happen to be at the same event at the same time and it comes up in conversation. But the truth is it typically happens over email, and you want the referral source sending an email to you and the prospect. So you're all 3 on the email. And then the second thing that you need, so that personal connection happens, that's where the transfer of trust happens. That's where the prospect's always reminded, oh, that's right, I trust Stacey. That's why she's connecting me with this person. She told me about them. I need to follow up, right? But the second most important thing is that when you're connected with that prospect, they have a need identified. They know they have a problem and they know that you potentially can solve it. So they're in a buyer's mode. They're in a buyer mentality. So when we talk about referrals as the quickest to close, the easiest to close, the best type of clients to work with, they're more loyal, right? They're less price sensitive because they trust you already. We talk about all those things that makes referrals awesome. It's because they are personally connected to you by a referral source who connects the prospect to you. And the prospect knows they have a problem they need to decide if they're going to spend money to solve, and that is why they're being connected to you. So they're in a buyer's mentality. That is why when you have those 2 pieces come together, which any other sales term, word of mouth, introduction or warm lead doesn't have, when you have all those pieces together, that is why at the end of the day, they are easier to close and quicker to close and less price sensitive and typically more loyal, and typically sometimes will refer other people to you because they were referred themselves. But we have to get really, really clear on what this looks like. It's not someone saying, hey, I was talking about you the other day. Now that's great. I want people talking about everybody. I think that's great. I want businesses to have people out there talking about them. But I want you to have a tactic where you actually know when someone says, hey, I told a client that they should definitely hire you, or they definitely need you, or that I'm working with you and you're amazing, and they don't actually make the connection to that prospect for you, then you're not in the driver's seat and you can't follow up. And to be honest, you don't know really who they are because you may have only gotten a first name and you're just fingers crossed, hoping and praying that they're going to follow up with you. I always tell folks, we want to make sure that our referral sources, yes, we want them talking about us, but we want them making that connection back to us. And that's how we move it from word of mouth buzz to an actual referral, is when they're talking about us and then they connect us as well. Or an introduction, like connect me all day long, that's great. But can you tell me why? Can you tell me why you're connecting me to this person? Do they need to buy from me? Like, are you setting this up like a referral, but you just didn't say the need? Or are you setting it up because you expect me to buy from them? Like, right. So introductions are lacking that need piece. And so that's how we get kind of confused. I hear people say, I just want to be introduced. I just want to be introduced. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to be referred. There's a difference between an introduction, word of mouth buzz, and a warm lead from a referral perspective.
It looks like we need to put a lot of effort in educating the referral person, not actually the client. So the client, the potential client who will come to you, will be already warm and probably ready to buy.
Yeah, so right, that's the definition of a referral, right? They are easier to close, they are quicker to close, they are less price sensitive, they are definitely warmer on the heat scale of where they are in their buying process, and they already trust you. That's because they already trust you, makes them less price sensitive and easier and quicker to close, and typically more loyal themselves. That doesn't mean every referral you receive you'll close, but you definitely have a better chance at closing referred prospects over any other type of a prospect. And I always tell folks they're yours to lose at that point. But yes, you do need, obviously, and that's one of the things that I teach folks is the understanding of what your referral sources need to know when it comes to being able to refer you. Except for the fact I teach it differently. And just about everything I teach is different, right? I teach referrals without asking, right? Without paying. Everything I teach about referrals is differently than most of the people out there. And the idea there is that yes, we do want to have our referral source understand, right, when they're referring us, what that looks like and training them, so to speak. I hate using that terminology, but that's what a lot of people say. But we do it differently. We don't come at a place like the referral source owes us anything. Because they don't. Like, we don't need to teach them or train them on exactly how to refer you just because they're supposed to know and they should do it right. And because it's your duty to train them. Like, you're not owed any referrals. You can deserve them and you can be referable and you can be worthy of them, but that doesn't mean you're owed them. Just because you deserve them doesn't mean you're owed them. So you have to be willing to do the work and you have to put in building that relationship with that referral source and nurturing that relationship along the way and making sure you're not just keeping in touch with your automated email newsletter, which are great and I want you to have, but not when it comes to building relationships with our referral sources. I want you to nurture those relationships with your referral sources, and I want you to be memorable and meaningful and stay top of mind and know how to use the right language, which is what we call referral seeds, so that you have an opportunity to really nurture a relationship with that referral source. And through this process, you naturally position yourself as the only person that they would refer when it comes to whatever it is that you do.
Well, now tell us all about these referrals. The magical trick, that how we can find these people, how can we build this relationship, and what we should do to get referrals through them.
Well, so the first thing I would say is there's nothing magical about it. I wish there was something easy or a silver bullet or an easy button to hit. There is not. That's not how it works. I always tell folks that you deserve referrals, but you are not owed them. So you need to be ready to do a little bit of work. And I always tell folks it starts with understanding who is referring you now or who's referred you in the past. So that's identifying your referral sources. That's actually the very first step. It's the very first step I take everybody through, because at that step we've identified who's referred you in the past. Who's referring you now? Now you even know if you have a list of referral sources, and you can identify who have you been ignoring, yet they consistently send you a referral or two or three or four every year, yet you don't spend any time cultivating a relationship with them. Can you imagine what the results would be if you actually took some time to show them some care and that you actually care about them and you appreciate their referrals, right? So when we identify our referral sources, we recognize who's on the list. And then we recognize, well, who's not on the list that we think should be on the list, and why aren't they on the list, right? Sometimes we think people refer us because we spend a lot of time with them and we talk business, but in reality, they've actually never referred anyone to us. We talk about it, right? We get together for coffee or we get together for an afternoon beverage or whatever, but nothing ever actually comes out of it. And you could swore that like they're one of my best referral partners, yet actually they've sent you no one. And so I take my students through like this process of just identifying your referral sources, but it's not complicated. I actually outline this whole piece in my book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, in chapter 8. And it really is sitting down with a list of your clients and going through those clients and figuring out, how did they hear about you? Who came through a Facebook ad? Who came through a networking event? Who was referred to you by your buddy Paul? Who was referred to you, by a colleague Sally? Like, who, all those clients, how did they come to know who you are? How were they connected to you? So did they see you right on, you just happen to come up as a #1 search result on Google? Awesome, right? That's the source. Or were you referred to them by someone? When you capture where your clients have come from, then you just eliminate from our list, for our purposes, right, anyone who wasn't referred. But what you're left with then is a list of the clients and who referred them. And then that then gives you your list of what I call gold. That is your list of referral sources, and they are gold for your business because they are the people who trust you enough to put their reputation on the line and send you referrals. Now your job is to build a way to really make sure that you are taking care of them, that you are being memorable and meaningful. So not the newsletter and not the text message every 32 days to say, hey, how are you? Like, and I'll give you an example in a minute, but we're like really going to be memorable and meaningful. That shows that we care for them, that shows that we appreciate them. We come from a place of thankfulness and gratitude always, and being authentic in who we are, because people can see through it if it's not real, right? I mean, they can tell if it's something else. And so it comes from a place of, do you appreciate your referral sources? If you answered yes to that question, then okay, you can do this. This will not be complicated for you. Identify your referral sources. Create a way that throughout an entire year, and you'll do it year over year, you create a plan, right? We call it the referral generating plan. It's the plan of touch points for our referral sources that allows us to be memorable and meaningful. And then we do have to make sure we're adding what I do like to refer to as the secret sauce, which is the language piece we're going to use, and it's how we plant referral seeds. There are so many opportunities to plant referral seeds that I think people don't realize in some cases, whereas there's lots of opportunities, it can feel overwhelming, but some of them are so very simple. I mean, just in the simple thank you note that you handwrite, you don't have somebody send on your behalf and you don't use a third party, but when somebody sends you a referral, just the simple thank you note you use should have specific language that allows you to plant referral seeds. So this idea is, it's not complicated. It's a plan. You're going to build it for a year. You're going to have some touch points, or what we call outreach, right, throughout the year to your referral sources, because you know who they are. You've identified them. And you're going to use the right language, and you're going to be authentic and genuine and show that you care, because ultimately that's what we're doing. And this doesn't mean you're sending gifts, right? And it doesn't mean you're writing a thank you note every single month. Like, that's not what we're talking about. But there's a way to do things. And it's really what I would say, it's what most people forget about when it comes to making an impact on somebody else's life, is to show them, I see you and I appreciate what you do for me. And I want to make sure you know that. And that you never forget that I am appreciative of what you do for me by sending referrals to my business. And because we're business owners, we just take all that and we put it into a process so we can actually remember to do it and to execute on it, and to make sure, we call it processitizing it with my students. I don't know if that's a word, I just like saying it, but it's basically we systematize what we've done and created a process and a system around it so that we actually execute on it, because nothing happens if you do nothing. You've got to be consistent.
Well, of course, nothing happens, but in the very beginning you said interesting thing that we need to look kind of through the whole sales process, like from the very beginning, where those referrals come from. Why should we do this instead of just like try to remember who brought us some clients?
Well, because nothing matters in your business if it's not based on data and facts. So if we use anecdotal evidence to think about, I think these people referred me, and then you start creating a plan for them where you're going to take care of them, like I just talked about, all the things we're going to do, don't you want to make sure you're doing it for the right people? Like, if I'm just assuming I know who these people are, then I may be doing this whole exercise for nothing. But if I sit down with my list of clients and I go through each of my clients and I identify, and if you've been in business 10 years, I'm not telling you to go back 10 years, maybe just go back 3 or 4, right? But go back a number of years. And if you're in your first year, well, this will be a little bit easier. You'll have a smaller list, right? Because you've only in your first year of business. But just go back a couple of years if you can and write down your clients' names. And then look in your, if you have a CRM, a client relationship management tool, then this will be really easy because more than likely you've been tracking this information and maybe not even realized it. If not, you may have to look back through email conversations or notes that you took when you first met with them or in their client folder or maybe on your calendar, right? So you have to look back to this information, but we have to know the facts. Like that's one of the things that drives me crazy when people teach referrals and they're like, if I just teach you to ask for referrals, you can ask anybody. I don't actually have to know anything about any of these people to know. I'm just asking, right? My system works because we identify people who've actually already shown a propensity for you because they have, and then just take them in a better way that makes all these pieces work together, and we use the right language so they're thinking about us from a referral perspective. So you have to identify your clients. You have to identify where they came from. Then again, if someone came from a Google ad, you just take them off the list and you're left with the people who referred you clients. And that is your list of referral sources. That is who we build our referral generating plan for. Now, lots of people will look at that list and be like, but I think Sally should be on this list because I think Sally, whereas my data shows me Sally's never referred you, but you think Sally should be referring you. Well, great. There's also a process that you can learn to turn someone into a referral source if they're not consistently or they've never referred you as it is. But those are two different things we're looking at from that perspective. So what matters most is the data that our business will reveal to us about what's actually worked in the past from a referral perspective, and that gives us a place to start. Most businesses, and I would say probably 80% to 90% of the businesses that I work with in my program, they may show up with some referral sources, they may show up with none, but most of them who show up with some referral sources at some point need more referral sources because your referral source list isn't static. It's fluid and it's ever changing. And there are 4 main types of referral sources. There's your clients, previous and current. There's your centers of influence, which are effectively people in your network who know what you do, but don't do what you do and come across your ideal client. So they're in a position to refer you. So clients and center influence are the top 2 types of referral sources. But you also have strangers and family and friends. Now, we don't build a referral generating plan for the strangers and family and friends. And there's some particular reasons for that. But there are actually 4 main types of referral sources. So when you do this data dump and you look at your clients and you're like, where did they come from? These are all the people referred to me. Well, were they referred by a client or they were referred by a center of influence? And that helps informs us, well, if I need more referral sources, who should I be trying to cultivate or turn into a referral source? When we take the time to look at the data in our business, it typically can direct our steps that we're ultimately supposed to take so that we can have some better or faster results.
And how do you cultivate this relationship then? How do you said you don't educate them. What do you do with them so they will refer more people to you?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Everybody looks at it like, I got to tell them, I got to educate them, I got to tell them who's my ideal client. They don't care. That's the thing we have to pay attention to. In the beginning, they don't care. They're not waking up every day saying, how can I help Stacey grow her business today, right? Nobody wakes up and says that. Nobody says, I am going to help, right, my CPA grow their business. I'm going to help my interior designer grow their business. I'm going to help my graphic designer grow their business. Nobody wakes up and says that. So with you coming in the mentality of, I got to educate you on who you should be referring to me, who cares? Because they don't care. But the reality of it is once you actually have nurtured a relationship with them and you've been memorable and meaningful and you've planted the referral seeds with them about referrals and how thankful you are for their referrals and that type of language, then they start to think about you in that way and in that way alone, which is the idea of referrals. Like when you start using the referral seed language, and there's ways to use it and there's ways to abuse it. So you have to understand kind of how it all fits together. But the idea here is that when you want someone to refer you, it's not about you. It's about them. And it's about you first identifying, would they be a good referral source? And then cultivating a relationship with them by taking care of them and doing things for them and then using the referral seed language. And then eventually it gets it to a place where they're either going to refer you or not. And then you have turned someone into a referral source, or you realized you didn't, because not everybody you want to refer you will ultimately end up referring you. It's not a one-to-one kind of process. And so from that perspective, we need to look at it in that way and say, okay, I want people to refer me. What do I do about that? Well, stop making it about you and stop thinking you've got to tell them how to refer you, because nobody cares. They're not trying to refer you. They will refer you if they trust you, but they'll refer you if they come across somebody that actually needs to be referred to you. Nobody wants to go through their LinkedIn contacts or their Rolodex on their phone and look for people to refer you. That's the asking mechanism, right? We don't want that. What we want is for me to feel a certain way about you, so that when the opportunity arises, of course I'm going to tell them about you, and I'm going to connect you to them so that you can work with them, because that's how much I care about you, because you have shown that you care about me. So a referral never happens because anyone cares about us as the business owner. But we will keep getting referrals and get referrals when we can show that we care about someone else, and of course that we do great work and that we're worthy of those referrals because we take good care of people.
What if someone refer you the wrong people? They just don't fit your ideal client.
Yeah, so that's a great question, because it will absolutely happen, and it'll happen to everyone at some point. And so the way I teach my students to really pay attention to this is ultimately at first, don't try to tell them who your ideal client is after they've just referred you one time. They're not yet in the habit of referring you. So the first thing I always teach folks is get that second or third referral that's not an ideal. Now you've got 2 or 3 people they've referred to you that's not an ideal fit. Then you can actually have a conversation with them about what it looks like for who your ideal client is. But we have that conversation in a very specific way. But ultimately what it is, it's a conversation. I always tell folks this is a phone call or a face-to-face conversation with your referral source. It is never done over email or over text, because everything's lost in translation. And it's important that you make sure that you're telling them how thankful you are for those referrals, right? And that the fact that you can't help them isn't on them. We don't ever want our referral source to feel defensive about someone they've sent to us. And we never want them to feel like they've got to qualify these clients and do work for us. But we can set the parameters when we use the right language and we use the right scripting. We can set parameters to who you will be able to help if they were to send you someone like that. So it's one of those things I tell folks, when folks come into my free community, when they're in my Referrals Without Asking Facebook group, or they're listening to my podcast, or they read my book or anything like that, they can take a quiz that helps them understand where they are and their ability to generate referrals. 85% of folks who take this quiz, of the thousands who have taken it, land at the beginner level. And we call them referral ninjas. So they're a referral ninja beginner. One of the skill sets that it takes to ultimately become a referral ninja master is the ability to change the quality of referrals you received. I always tell my beginners, don't worry. It's not a big deal yet if you've gotten one referral that's not an ideal fit, right? If you get 2 or 3, okay, then there's a skill set you need to learn and you need to address to be able to change the quality of the referrals you are receiving.
And then what if people don't have any referrals yet, or had only one person? How they can find more of those people? How they can cultivate this relationship?
Yeah, so it's a process, and it's playing the long game. Ultimately, what that process breaks down to look like is, first, you need to be able to identify who could be referring you or who you think should be referring you. And the identification process is usually the one people skip because they just want to get to the point. And I'm like, actually, the identification is the point. Like, let's identify who we think could be referring us. Ultimately, that's what we want. And so we're looking at this from like, okay, who could be referring us? And then there's a process that you go through where you're starting to nurture a relationship. You don't ask anyone to marry you on the first date, right? I mean, I think if my husband asked me to marry him on the first date, I'd be like, okay, weirdo, never talking to you again, right? There's a courtship that happens before we decide to put a ring on it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to do the same thing with our referral sources. We have to cultivate a relationship. We have to show them that we care. We have to show them that we understand their business and how we can help them. And then when you're planting the referral seed language over time, right, through whatever those touch points look like, then you're actually able to get them to a place where they will refer you. But it is is a process, first of all, and you are absolutely playing the long game, but it really starts with identification of who should be or who could be referring you. And there's a way that I teach that. I actually have a 3-part series on my podcast. It's episode 89, 91, and 92. It skips episode 90, but it actually walks you through what does it look like to understand and unpack your referral sources and then answer the question, okay, I need more. Now what do I do? And so it starts with easily just identify who should be referring you. And then once you know the who, sometimes the steps reveal themselves. But like I tell folks, it is a process, a series of touch points or steps that you'll be doing to cultivate a relationship with them using the right language until they refer you, and then they become someone on your referral list.
Fantastic. Well, Stacey, let's imagine that after listening to this episode, our conversation, our listeners put together those potential referrals or those people who refer them clients. What are the next 3 steps that they could take, or that you would recommend them to take within next month to maybe get more referrals without even asking for that?
Yeah, so if they've done what I would say is actually technically step number 1, if they have identified who their existing referral sources are, or they've identified who they want to be their referral sources, the next thing is to pay attention to who those people are and what things they have in common, and building out that referral generating plan for how you can take care of them over the next 12 months. Now, I want you to do this every year, but let's just start with the first year. But what does it look like over the next 12 months to cultivate relationships and to show them that you appreciate the referrals they've sent you? So the first thing is figuring out how you're going to take care of them. The second thing is I want you to learn how to plant referral seeds and exactly what that looks like. And so you're going to have to do some work to figure that out. And then the next step that I would tell folks is the consistency. Once you know who your referral sources are and you start to take care of them and you're planting the right referral seeds, you're going to start getting referrals. Don't rest on your laurels. Keep that plan going. Keep using those referral seeds to continue to get more referrals, not just in your first year, but in your 3rd year, or you're in your 6th year, or you're in your 10th year, to keep getting referrals and keep adding referral sources. It's not a complicated process. I outline it all in my book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. We talk about it at nauseum, I think, sometimes on my podcast, Roadmap to Grow Your Business. But it's not a complicated system, but it absolutely will take work. So you have to be ready and willing to do the work.
Fantastic. Well, Stacey, share with our listeners now how they can find your book, your podcast, and how they can connect with you.
Yep. So my home base is my website, StaceyBrownRandall.com. And of course, Stacey has an E. And of course, my book is Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, sold wherever books are sold. There's an audio version, an ebook version, and a printed version as well. And then, of course, my podcast is available wherever you list your favorite podcast listing app. Just search for Roadmap to Grow Your Business. And that'll direct you to all of the free resources that I have, whether it's that Referral Ninja quiz or any of the challenges that I do, or just any of the live videos I do every week on my Facebook page, Stacey Brown Randall. I'm always helping people understand what it looks like to generate referrals without asking, without paying, and without being overly promotional and gimmicky. And so there's lots of free resources and tools available.
Well, my dear listeners, I'll put all the main links into the show notes, and you go check this out. And I wish you to get more and more referrals this year. Stacey, thank you so much. It was so amazing to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It is important to understand who your true referrals are and maintain the relationship with them. People do not care about your business and how to refer you the clients, but they will refer you if they trust and care about you, because you showed that in the first place. Question: how often do you have a referral client? Once a month? Once a year? Leave me a comment below. I'm curious. Also, for more practical business tips, check the video that will appear right here.